Hey, everybody. Such a beautiful sunny day. It feels like spring is in the air, although it's still like -9 here in Montreal. That's Celsius. So we're below freezing in Fahrenheit. I don't know what it is. I'd have to do a calculation. My brain doesn't work that fast with math. I have to use my fingers. I don't want to embarrass myself, but it's still pretty cold today. A nice wind. So I was cold. I was in a senior's home this morning and parked my car, had to walk a few blocks. The wind was ripping. It was cold, but the sun is out and we don't have as much snow and it just feels so nice. Spring is in the air, puts a little pep in my step, I guess you could say. So everybody, thank you for being here with us. Today we're going to talk about something that we all need, we all want, and we certainly have felt it more than ever in the last year, and that's a need for connection. We want to feel close to people. We want to feel like people understand us. We want to show that we understand who people are. And it's more than just, understanding their feelings. It's also understanding all of the experiences and decisions and relationships that they've had throughout their life that make them who they are, to have those current reactions to things, current perceptions of things. And we all want this. We all want people to understand who we are and know those experiences. We want it, but sometimes we're not open to sharing. Sometimes we're not open to hearing. Sometimes we're protective. We don't want to be vulnerable. It's not easy to open up and share, and especially within families. I know for myself that my girlfriends know more about me than, to be honest, my husband. He knows a lot, but my girlfriends know even deeper, darker thoughts, I think, than my husband. Definitely my mom does not know every layer of me, and I'm sure I don't know every layer of her. And I think that's probably pretty usual. And what I love about our guest today, Dr. Sara K. Schneider, is she's developed this incredible game called the Human Journey, which actually helps families facilitate those discussions, have those discussions, and start to get to know each other on a different level, which can help their functioning as a family, their dynamics, and it can certainly help people support each other in terms of the caregiving relationship. Sara, thank you for being here.
It's a pleasure, Stephanie. I'm glad we're meeting at last.
Yeah, instead of just connecting, right?
We're connecting.
Online, but we're connecting. So let me give a brief introduction to you, Sara. You're the founder and CEO of The Human Journey, a company that has invented and provides training with an innovative game-based process that supports social workers, hospice workers, chaplains, therapists, skilled congregational volunteers as they help families and support groups through life's challenges. So this is like a train the trainer type of a game, and we'll get into that more in details, but it's a game in which the staff of different residences or churches, as Sara said, or different organizations learn about how to facilitate the game to help families. She's done a lot of different work. She's worked with many healthcare organizations. She also consults with hospices and healthcare and mission-driven organizations on learning and growth and on patient and client experience service design. Now, her PhD, this is really interesting. I just asked her. I asked, what is your PhD in? And she said, performance studies. And I said, I thought I read you had a background in anthropology. And she said, performance studies is a blend of cultural anthropology and cross arts discipline, which I had never heard of. What does that mean, Sara?
It's a great question, and people always seem kind of delighted, Stephanie, when they hear how it all works. It's kind of like a telescope where you can look at arts events with a cultural lens around how they got produced. What are the mores that allowed them to go, in my case, I have a theatrical background, allowed them to be put on the stage, all of the things that came together culturally for that to happen. And then if you reverse the telescope, you can look at cultural events. And in my work in the past, I've looked at the fashion world, I've looked at undercover police, believe it or not, as cultural performers, which it's easy to see they are as they act in role in order to gather information in an investigation.
That's amazing, because it also, what the thing with performance arts is we're looking for what's the story, what's the human component, and how do people connect, so that that makes perfect sense to me as to
Yeah.
why then you've developed a game, because that's what this is about, is connecting and understanding each other and being engaged on into somebody's story at a different level. So let's talk about your inspiration for this game. Where did it come from?
Yeah, that's interesting. It's back in 2012. I had a series of losses, 3 different losses that all occurred in very close connection with each other. And I started thinking about, how do people tell their stories of loss? And I was looking for a method of storytelling that wasn't merely getting something off one's chest, but that was actually community driven, and that allowed an entire community to heal rather than merely the person sharing. And so I started working with that on a more abstract level as a way to get out of my own grief, in essence. I started making a game.
I think, though, Sara, that that's how so much of us are drawn into the field of helping people, and
That's right.
why we can be good at our jobs is that
Mm-hmm.
it's based on personal experience. So, and we usually, in our own way of healing, try and find a way to then help others. So it kind of makes sense to me, why you
Yeah.
would be drawn into that based on those experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me a bit about the human journey, this
Sure.
game, and what does it look like? How do you, I know it's you have what you call conductors, and I want to get to that in a minute, who
Yeah.
train or who take the families through this. But first, like conceptually,
Yeah.
my mom hypothetically lives in, residence A. How
Mm-hmm.
would I, as a family member, experience this game? Like, how does that
Mm-hmm.
happen?
Well, someone, say you have someone who works with the family. It could be a staff member at the residence. It could be actually a trained peer facilitator, because oftentimes the more well people in such a facility like to do something for the fellow residents. And they would propose getting together. They wouldn't necessarily go into a lot of detail. All they would say is, this is a fun communication game, and it'll help the family feel closer. And so they'll offer that to the family. And maybe some people will say, that sounds like it's about feelings. I don't like feelings. I'm not going there.
You're not going to make me talk, are you?
Yeah. It's like, no. Please don't do that to me. And in that case, that's fine. I mean, whoever wants to take part, they're the right people.
So you just said whoever wants to take part, they're the right people. But are
Mhm.
there particular families that could be identified that could benefit from I mean, I realize everybody could benefit. I'm not
Mhm.
trying to say that they couldn't, but are there particular groups or
Yeah.
dynamics within families that are better suited to go through
For this.
this process?
Yeah, I would say the families for whom there are people who need drawing out, and who, or where there are families. I invented the human journey with anticipatory grief in hospice in mind. And I was thinking largely of the people who are sitting around in the patient or the kind of target person, but don't know what to talk about, don't know what to do with themselves. And instead, in this really key moment of their lives, they're fiddling with their cell phones instead of doing the things that only can happen at that moment.
There's two things about that are so beautiful. First off, anticipatory grief, part of that process that people go through, the person who's dying and also the family, it's called life review. This is part of what we need, is to go through who we are and what led us to be that way and in that place, and our regrets, our remorse, our joys, our disappointments, all of that, so that when we leave this earth, we feel a sense of peace, that we've said everything that we needed to say, we've processed everything, and our relationships are intact. And the family needs that as well. So that's one thing that I love, is that that's a great time to do it. The second piece you talked about was, the families fiddling with the phones. And it's true, but it's very hard for caregivers and family members to know what to do,
That's right.
especially when they're, it's not like they're visiting and going out to get ice cream and, where they can have distractions of life around. And you're just like, go to visit someone in a residence and you're sitting there, you're like, so what did you do today? I played bingo again. Okay, what'd you have for lunch? Well, they serve shepherd's pie again. It's like a Groundhog Day, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
people don't know what to do, and they feel like they're ineffective as caregivers when they don't have something to do. So this is a way for them to actually be doing something
That's
that's
right.
really meaningful, actually.
That's right. It channels that energy into something that makes the most of this life. It's almost like a life nexus where there's an opportunity to do meaning making if only you would take it. And it presents them that opportunity to grab it in a way that's going to be lasting for them.
Meaning making. Ooh, love that. That's such a cool phrase, meaning making.
Yeah.
I got to write it down because I might forget. And if I ever use it, I'm going to give you credit.
Cool. Nicole,
I really like that. A meaning making opportunity.
Yeah.
That's really nice, Sarah. I like that. Mm-hmm. So let's say now I'm a daughter going to visit my mom. Mm-hmm. One of the staff people sees me on my phone and says, "Oh, looks like Stephanie's struggling to connect with her mom. Let's try and get this thing going." Mm-hmm. What does it then look like for me? Talk me through the actual game, the human journey.
Yeah, so typically the matriarch of the family doesn't need a lot of persuading. They tend to be all in, and they tend to be the one who kind of gathers others to do it. And nobody says no to mom, kind of thing.
That's right.
And then the conductor takes out a beautiful tin box with what looks like a game inside. It's got a board, it's got decks, it's got dice. And the production of this game is actually very beautiful. It's intended for multiple uses with many different families. So it's really hardy materials in a beautiful artistic kind of format. And so let's say the staff member is she's unpacking all of the materials and starting to explain them to the family as you go. So if you were on the outside and you were kind of another nosy resident who wanted to see what was going on at that table over there, what you would see is what looked like a board game that happened to have a stranger there, or a second, an extra person. And what was that extra person doing?
And the before we get on to the more details of the game, you've used the term conductor, and I mentioned that in the beginning, instead of, let's say, facilitator or staff member. Mm-hmm. Why did you choose that word when describing the role of that person to lead? Why conductor?
With the human journey, I was thinking of it as having a couple of different dimensions. One is that the person who leads is almost like a train conductor, somebody who knows the route, can kind of plan for what's ahead and get people there safely. So it has a kind of scouting the route, making sure everybody comes along in a safe way kind of element. But I also liked the word because it had resonance of an orchestral conductor who makes sure that there's harmonious contribution among all the different voices.
Amazing. I really like that term. It's really nice, Sarah. So, okay, so now my family is sitting down, and there's cards and dice and stuff. I don't need like all aspects of exactly how the game works, but just in terms of like thematic things that come out. Are there categories or information?
Yeah, that's a really well framed question. There is the experience is organized in 4 parts. And the first part is what I call the rehearsal phase. It takes
your theater's coming out.
It takes a little bit of my theater background. Nobody's playing anyone other than themselves, but ultimately their most grounded selves. There's not a character other than you, but they're engaging in a structure that has the natural kind of organic emotional predictability of a well-constructed play. So they go through, the first phase is the rehearsal phase, and in that it's a little of the life review that you were talking about earlier. They're reckoning with the conditions that made them them and the gifts that also made them them at the very earliest parts of their lives. And that's the rehearsal phase, where they're kind of collecting what in theater we call the backstory.
Okay, so it's more like the remote history. Where'd you grow up? Brothers and sisters? Did you go to school? That kind of stuff?
It's even deeper than that. It's the conditions in life that they were kind of dropped into from wherever they were before they were born. So it's the family status. Say something like my father was, or I have a family member who was incarcerated, or I was raised by grandparents, or 6 o'clock dinner was absolutely key in our household.
Okay, or
Um,
so for someone like my grandmother, she would, because she's told me these stories about her own parents. My grandma grew
mhm,
up in the depression and the incredible poverty that they experienced and the bed
mhm.
bugs in her homes. So she's kind of telling who her parents were, the lives that they had led, and how that created the conditions into which she was born.
That's right.
Okay.
It's exactly that. It's what's the soil into which you were planted, in essence.
Oh, beautiful. Okay, so
Yeah.
that's the first piece, and then what are the other three?
So, and there's a little more to that. They also collect, in a sense, the gifts with which they were endowed from the very beginning, things that they didn't have to work for or deserve in any way. They simply happened to be good with animals. They happened to be good at kicking a ball. They happened to be good at organizing other people, even big people around them. And so these were gifts that they already had. So that's the rehearsal phase. And then they move on to the three acts. So there's Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3, and we have intermissions between each of the acts so that people can get a breath of fresh air, a cigarette if that's what they
Shot of
need,
whiskey, should
a
they
shot of
need it?
whiskey. Although typically after Act 1, they feel pretty darn good.
Yeah,
They have there's a warm up process to kind of help them feel it's going to be a safe experience for them, and they end up you see kind of an elation by the end of Act 1.
I bet.
Yeah.
I
um,
bet, because also too, it's like, you want to tell your story. You're not
yeah,
necessarily sure how it's going to be
yeah,
received, and to have it in a safe, more
mm,
structured way must feel really nice for people. And they're like, oh, I'm getting it out there. People are hearing it. People are interested. I don't have to be ashamed, or I can be proud, or whatever it is. And then that kind of
exactly.
helps to
You got it.
open people up.
Yeah, that's exactly it, Stephanie. And the fact that there's a stranger there, and in essence, kind of a professional stranger, allows that story to come fully out. Especially if the story has been told before, but the person may have felt that people thought they'd heard it before, but they haven't heard it in this way, in the way that's meaningful to the person who's telling it.
Okay, so tell me about some of the other acts. What are some other things that you'll come across or
Yeah.
expect?
So the human journey follows a very rough kind of life course. Although you don't have to think about it that way, you can think about it as the first act being about what you have received in life, the second act being about the decisions you made as an adult and how those shaped your character, and then finally, what you want to create for the future with the people you're doing this with.
Mm. Like that gives me chills. Like, what's that legacy that you're
Yeah,
trying to leave behind?
yeah,
How beautiful. And so, is it the game, the actual like procedures of it? Is it question and answer, or is it the cards prompt, or how is that
yeah.
structured?
It's what you just said. The cards act as a prompt, but it's a little more involved in that, in the sense that there are also listening challenges that people are being asked to do. And in essence, the real emotional meat of the human journey lies in part in those listening challenges, because people are, in a sense, strong armed by the structure into listening well and demonstrating that they're listening well.
Mhm.
And the power of that listening is profound for people.
Oh, I'm sure it is, and you don't
Yeah.
need to use duct tape, I suppose, to actually
No,
shut people's mouths.
no. Occasionally, you have to help return them to the ground rules of the experience, which are absolutely key for
Mhm,
keeping people safe.
mhm.
But the listening challenges are a big piece. The other thing that's a little different here is that um, the prompts are not always verbal. Some of them are about breathing. Some of them are about gesturing.
Mm.
Some of them are about sketching. And so they reach to the people who are not necessarily storytellers or sharers. Sometimes one of the features of some of the cards that I really like is sometimes they're asked to think of a story but not tell it.
Mm.
And that can be a very powerful moment.
Yeah, and I'm looking at your little agave, your little dog's face
Oh,
in the back. She's
oh,
so
there's
cute.
the dog. She's the trusty steed of the
She's
human
so
journey.
cute. She's so cute. So this is really interesting, Sarah. So now I know that it's a game that is run by a professional social worker, nurse, chaplain who already has some training, but it could also be used by volunteers and such. So,
Mhm.
how does an organization identify who might be a natural fit
Yeah.
for delivering, for conducting your
Yeah.
orchestra?
Yes. Lovely. It really takes two qualities. One is, as you might expect, is the warmth, so that people feel comfortable in your presence early in the experience. They don't feel that they're going to be sharing, they feel comfortable to go as deep as they would like. And they're always making their own choice anyway. And we're always encouraging people not to go. We keep telling people not to go very deep so that they feel permission to go deep if they want to. It's almost like a negative thing there, but negative psychology. But the other quality, which is a smaller subset of the warm people, is the people who can be both warm but also firm, because the human journey only derives its safety from the willingness to notice group behavior at a subtle level and to bring people in within the realm of the ground rules.
Yeah. I bet.
Yeah.
And the length of time, how long is the training for the conductor, and then how long is the actual game?
Yeah, the training consists of 3 weekly sessions with me in a small group. It's a live webinar-based training. So they are 8 hours in total. So 3 hours in the first week, 3 a second week, and then a wrap-up session that's 2 hours. And there's homework in between where people start practicing the human journey with family members or friends. And that process is scaffolded so that they do part of it, they come back and they report on what they've done, and I coach them through what they've experienced. And then they go back and they do the whole human journey with a second group. And so by the time they're done, they know the whole running of it intimately. They've done it.
Yeah. So the training is the one time of 8 hours in terms of, I'm thinking like, is in terms of an organization's investment, they have to say, okay, so we have to set aside 8 hours for this person. And what about for the actual game, the playing time?
Yes.
What's the range there?
It was designed as a single sitting 2 to 3 hour experience, but it's a very flexible thing. Because you have those 4 parts, it can actually be divided along the intermission points and done even in, therapists are using it in, a series of 3 to 4 1-hour sessions. And then there's a procedure for coming back and kind of re-immersing people in the mood of the experience at the next session.
It's nice that it has that flexibility, Sara, because it can be probably daunting. And if you're someone who hasn't shared a lot and all of a sudden you're like opening up these wounds and being vulnerable, it's a lot to have to go on for hours and hours.
It is.
And so people need to kind of regroup, resettle, take a breather, have that shot of whiskey or 2 in the privacy of their own home, and then come back to play. So it's nice that it's flexible. And what would you say to organizations who are watching this and say, you got to be kidding me. This sounds all fine and dandy and great, but we don't have resources for this, Sara. We don't have the time set aside. Why would that be important for my organization to even have
to go
this?
ahead and do it? Because for a mission-driven organization like a hospice or like a CCRC that wants to make sure that families, that they're serving the entire family, because their clients are often people, in the middle age group as much as it is the older folks. This is a qualitative difference in the kind of service they're able to help people who are on the brink of decision making. They may be looking to a different level of care. They may be looking at the bringing in of memory care. They may be looking at more end of life kind of care. And while the human journey is not specifically about the decisions that they're going to make, any of those people in those organizations have seen families who are like the proverbial deer in the headlights around how they're going to make a decision. And what the human journey can do for them is quiet their different, the word energies is coming to mind. It's not the best word for now, but they're different wills in the moment to be able to listen for each other's values, and then to be able to support the values of really the chief decision maker, the person whose life it is.
Hallelujah. Oh my God, Sara, how happy I am to hear you say that, because that's what it's about. It's helping I'll just use the term patient, which I don't really like that term, but the identified person who has the illness or whatever it is, that why we're all gathering around to support. It's that person that should be leading the cause, always, always, always
Yeah.
the head coach of the team.
Yeah.
And in order for that person to be heard and truly understood, so that decisions that follow align with that person's expectations, their values, their morals, their experiences,
Yeah.
is to know them and to understand why they might be making that decision. So, for example, my
Mhm.
mother-in-law, she does not want to move into a senior's residency. She's autonomous right now, and she could really use the help of not having to
Yeah.
cook and these kinds of things. But she'll tell the story of watching her mom in a nursing home, she calls it, very institutionalized. That's what she remembers, and that is
Mhm.
exactly why now she just
Mhm.
cannot consider it. And it's good that I know that, because then I know how to help her work through
Exactly.
that now.
Yeah.
So that's really, really nice, Sara.
Yeah. Thank you. It's wonderful to see people not just tell the fact of the stories and the formative moments for them, but the prompts and the structure of the experience helps you see their experience from their eyes, and it's really helpful for people because they get a felt sense of why this matters, and then
Yeah.
they're not in the position of, God forbid, going against what mom or dad or whoever might have wished for themselves.
Yeah, so the human journey really creates multiple opportunities to put yourself in the shoes of somebody else,
Exactly.
to understand where they're
Yeah.
coming from.
Yeah.
So, where can people learn about the human journey more? Organizations who are interested in, taking your course, accessing it, having it on site for their
Mhm.
families.
Yeah.
How can people find you?
Well, it's pretty easy. The website is thehumanjourney.com. And the only thing you have to remember is to put hyphens between all the words. It's
Oh,
the-human-journey.com. And that's the easiest way to find me. You can also, register. We have an Eventbrite site that you can access directly from the website. And a third thing would be if they go through your LinkedIn. They will see that we've been offering a code for folks who are your fans who would like to take part.
that's nice.
And if it's all right to mention, um, if they enter there's a place on Eventbrite for a promo code. It's a little hard to find. It's right in blue at the top. And if they enter Stephanie at the top,
Ah,
they
not Stephanie's fans, just Stephanie. I'm
just
just kidding.
Stephanie. They will behave as Stephanie. Um,
Okay.
and they can get 20% off of any of the dates.
That's amazing. That's
Yeah,
amazing. So,
yeah.
wow, Sara, what a pleasure to have you on and to hear about this innovation and this creative way to get families, to help families, not get them, to
Mhm.
guide families into a
Yeah,
deeper connection with one another,
yeah.
understanding one another, and in the end, respecting one another's expectations and what it is
Mhm,
that they want, and having that
mhm.
real connection. Love it, love it, love it. So,
Wonderful.
I want you to. Is there anything else that you want to say before we
No,
finish?
this has been amazing. I mean, you've really gotten the core of the experience. I think the one thing that I would say at the end is that, we were talking about legacy building
Mm,
early on, and I've thought about that because I know how important that is to institutions who are trying to offer service to their residents and to their patients, in the case where they call them patients or clients. And what's interesting with the human journey is it does that in 360, so that it's not just the person who is making life decisions or maybe very ill. It's not just that person who's legacy building. It's the family as a unit that's legacy building.
that's right. And it transfers on, because legacies are not just what a person did in their life, like with tangible outcomes. It's a
Mhm.
lot about who a person was. And so legacy building can be me watching my mom support her parents and what
Yeah,
a great caregiver she's been, is and including me in that process. Then
that's right.
I take on the legacy of, in our family, this is something we do. We care for our older adults. So that's
Yeah,
true. It is a full circle
full circle.
process.
Yep. And as they
Beautiful.
create their future together in Act Three, what they're doing is essentially making a vow to each other as a family that they can survive whatever it is.
Amazing. It's really, really nice, Sarah. Thank you so much. So check out the
Yeah.
human journey. I will add the link to this post so that anyone can just go directly to your website and get information about it. And again, if you put in the code Stephanie, you get 20% off. Thanks, Sarah, for doing that.
Pleasure.
Sarah, hang on for just a second. I'm going to end the broadcast, but hang on for a sec.